Welcome to the Travel Business Unpacked, where passion meets possibility. Here's your host, Meredith Calloway.
All right. So, welcome to the podcast, Travel Business Unpacked. On today's episode, I get to interview Jen Campbell Boles of Explore More Family Travel, who is someone who went through our Travel MBA program several years ago. But Jen is not only a super successful travel business owner, she is also local to our Mooresville location. She lives a town or two over. So she gets to be nice and close to our office. But also, she is a wife, a mom, a sister, a daughter. And I think she has a lot of pieces and layers to her story that many women may relate to. And so that's why I think, Jen, you make a fantastic, inspirational interviewee for today's podcast. So, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
And thank you for having me. That's such a great intro. I'm excited.
It is exciting. It is exciting. So, um, the name of the podcast is Travel Business Unpacked, which means we want to unpack things, right? We want to go deep. We don't want to just talk surface level about um, having a travel business and what it takes and what it's going to require and how to find success. So let's begin with what did your life and career look like before you embarked on this journey?
Well, immediately preceding this role, I was a stay-at-home mom because I had twins in 2013, and then that was enough for me. So I quit my corporate job at that time. Previously, I'd been in finance for pretty much my entire career. And so I was like, well, I'm going to step back for a few years until they're a little bit older, and then we were in a place in life where I could do that until they were getting to be towards like kindergarten age, and then that's when I was like, let me start thinking about what I'm going to do. And I moved from Savannah, Georgia, to Charlotte, North Carolina area, suburb near Mooresville, North Carolina, the travel capital of the world,
Yes, it
as,
is.
as GTN likes to say, and so or something like that. But I always kind of thought I'd go back and do some sort of finance role because I'm in a banking town now. My husband works for the bank. A lot of our neighbors work for banks. It's just what people do here. But as that time drew near and the boys were in their last year of preschool, I saw a fateful um, Facebook post that was by someone Meredith knows, Sandy Sale, and it mentioned that she sold travel. And so I was like, I need to meet you and find out what that's about. And she suggested, we met for coffee, and she suggested that I go to the Book More Travel Workshop in 2019. And so I went without a travel business. I wasn't a travel advisor. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was building a website using YouTube videos, not knowing exactly what that would lead to. And ended up there. And that night I came home from the event and said to my husband, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be successful, and I'm signing up for the travel MBA program. And he's kind of like, whatever. Um, neither of us had ever used a travel advisor. That wasn't something that I even really knew existed until that I saw that Facebook post by Sandy. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up doing this after a career of corporate finance and then staying home. I didn't just sit home and like eat bonbons, as they say. Having twins is a lot of work, but also um, I did work for a friend who had her own business. And so I was doing like logistics and finance for them. So it kind of gave me a peek into being an entrepreneur, which I do think was helpful in helping me understand what is involved in owning your own business. But I still wasn't prepared because I realized there would be. So, yeah, so that's what led me to explore more.
I love that. So what I do know about you is that you're definitely a high achiever person. You know, you don't settle for status quo. Obviously, with a successful career in banking, that was validated because that's a pretty competitive industry to just get a job in the industry to begin with. Um, so being that high achiever, what misconceptions did you have about becoming a travel advisor?
I guess it was more I thought of it as a travel agent, you know. I did not
Yeah.
know that the industry had evolved over the years, and therefore something I never even considered. So I don't know how that really ties into me being an overachiever, which I definitely was. I don't know. I don't know if it's a competitive streak or what it was, but I always wanted to be the best at whatever I put my brain towards. So, like once I did enough research to knew this was something I wanted to do, I knew I was going to go all in. Um, but of course, I launched in 2019 before COVID, so there was a little
Yeah.
pause there. But it was good in stopping and learning kind of what needed to be done. But I'm sure we'll get to that eventually.
Yeah, how I see it tying into being an overachiever, because I got on this journey many years before you did, similar background, right? And I had discounted the travel agent role because I didn't think there was enough financial upside for me to make it worth my while. And
Right.
so that's what I was curious about is, um, did you have an inner battle at some point about, is this really worth doing? Because
Yeah, I mean, I guess, it was the whole thought of being an order taker or something like that. And
yeah,
I think
yeah,
just learning, once I learned of the role of a travel advisor and what opportunities there were, um, I don't really think I had a thought as to the financial implications at that point. It was more about the fulfillment of the job because I hadn't really been working for 5 years. So we weren't relying on that income. I think that would be very hard to walk away from a full-time top position. I do think that my position in life at that time made it easier to try it out because there wasn't this like, oh, I need to make this amount of money to make it worth my while. And so I do think I was blessed in that way that it didn't factor into my decision.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
fully went in as someone passionate about travel and wanting to make a living at it. And I think what I just being at that book more travel workshop, which just to think about and I know that was not a GTN event, but like the people up on the stage or some of the people I'm still friendly with today. And so just knowing how much everyone's business has increased since, then using 2019, not 2020
yeah,
numbers. Um, I saw those people and were like, wow, they're successful at this and I can be successful at it too. But then knowing how their businesses have grown, like, because almost everyone within our community, I feel like their businesses have just grown by leaps and bounds since starting. I just think that what I thought was success then, now I realize there's just so much more potential than I even realized at the time.
mhm. Yeah, I think the pandemic has served us more than it's hurt us. It's set us up in many positive ways. But before we get to that, I want to dig a little deeper into that passion for travel. What does a passion for travel look like for Jen Campbell Bowles? Like, what do you see? What are you excited about? What gets you giddy about travel?
Um, I just know that I always have to have a trip planned to look forward to
Yeah.
because it feeds my soul. Like reading about travel, reading about destinations, reading about, I mean, experiences you can have in a destination. I mean, that gets me so excited. That's all I want to read about. People are like, "Oh, you don't read books?" I'm like, "No, I read blog posts or, what kind of do you listen to like murder mystery podcasts?" I'm like, "No, I listen to travel advisors talking about being a travel advisor or, something in the travel space because my hobby is my job. I mean, that's all I wanted to ever do was be researching my next trip. As far as what types of trips, I mean, I love traveling with my family. We travel 3 to 4 times a year together, and we go far. Like, we go, to places like next week we're going to Italy, we're going to Japan next April, so, for spring break. So, I think being just showing my kids the world, I'm very passionate about, but also, even if they're not there, I'm still really excited about it. So, because like there are opportunities now at the place I am in my business that I can do, I sometimes I've been invited to things or, I'll go like I was on the symposium with GTN earlier this year. So, but the place that gets me the giddy would be the Mediterranean. I mean, that is my favorite part of the world. The people are so warm and friendly there, and I think we took our boys there for their first international trip. We went to Italy and Greece, and so, it's got a special place in my heart because of, just knowing we could get outside of our everyday, and go have an adventure like that, and just because they were one-year-old toddlers didn't mean we had to stop traveling. I think, promoting that message of not just waiting till your kids are older, not you don't have to wait, like, there's not a bad time to go and explore the world.
Yeah, I've always been in awe of you because you seem so fearless when it comes to just taking your kids on that next trip, and, you know, long haul flights with the kids and then you, I think during this journey in the last 6 years have also launched into taking the boys by yourself and I've done that myself too, and people are so afraid of something like that, and then you do it and you're like, this is the best thing ever, right?
Yeah.
um Tell us about some of your favorite moments traveling with your husband and your kids or just with the kids, um, where you're just like, I'm so glad I'm doing this because this is absolutely putting my kids on a different trajectory than if they hadn't had this experience.
I mean, there's just so many that,
No.
things that I mean, just like moments, right? Just having those moments where you're not distracted by everything else. I mean, I'm just a person that my brain never turns off. I have to remove myself from my everyday to really be able to, I don't want to say focus on them because I mean they get a lot of my attention, but like my kids still hold my hand or when we go out and about, but like
Yeah.
more on vacation, they're holding my hand a lot. There's just like
Oh,
more of those moments, and I know that we're getting to an age where all that's gonna end, or a lot of that will end, and so I'm really, like, just grasping to that. I told my husband because for our trip next week, I'm like, "If we're walking down the street and one of them is holding my hand, I need you to take a picture. I know you hate taking pictures, but I need to capture this because I know that these moments are fleeting," you know? Um, but the actual, experiences, I think just, some of the things that I've learned through being a travel advisor, like private guides, and having that ability to have these conversations with people who live where you're visiting, and you're really able to learn from them. And um, I think that has been big, but also just going places and seeing, like when we were in Thailand, like we passed some homes that were just not up to the type. anything we'd see in the US, and then just them realizing that people are living there and this is how lucky they are.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but really, it's just the moments of the being together and not having like the friend down the street pop in, or we do have. Don't get me wrong, they get to be on electronics when we travel, but we do limit it. We don't let them have it at dinner. We'll let them have a pad of paper, so that they can um, draw, and then we can talk about like kind of what they did that day, that sort of thing. So I just think the closeness is what really is special about being away with them.
Yeah, I would agree with that, echo that. My experience, I'm in a second marriage now, and we have not blended the families into how in one household. We've made that as a conscious decision not to do that. And we use travel, our family travel experiences as an opportunity to deepen their bonds and have them have this kind of relationship with each other that doesn't feel so forced on each other.
Yeah,
You know, it's an
yeah,
opportunity
nice.
to just it happens much more naturally when we're traveling together. And I think that has absolutely worked. So yeah, travel is a medicine for so many things, but deepening the bond with your kids is definitely one of them for sure.
And my
So
husband, I mean, like
yeah,
running my own business means that there are late nights and there's weekend work sometime. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest, I try to limit it, I try to put parameters on it, but it does happen, and so he ends up doing more than his fair share because I own a business, and so,
yeah,
um, it's a chance for us to reconnect. Like, we're trying to do, like, a trip every other year, maybe without the kids, but even being away with them is still, like, important because
yeah,
just to get out of the rut of our everyday. I mean, our everyday is great, like, we have a great life, but, you just don't see each other like you do when there are no distractions.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's life changing for sure. Um, so the so you started in early of 2019 in the Travel MBA program, which is a year-long program. And then we hit 2020, you get out of the program and it's now the pandemic. So tell me a little bit about what Explore More Family Travel looked like in its first 2 years. Um, and what was the rose and what was the thorn, I suppose, during those first 2 years?
Well, just really quick, I was the last person to sign up under the 6-month program for Travel MBA. So
Okay.
I did have 6 months. I don't think that really matters though, because I'm guessing the people in the 12-month program are at the 6-month mark, probably selling about the same that I was selling at
Yeah,
that point. I had just signed my first group, and then right before all of this happened. So that was interesting because I needed to reschedule that. So that was my biggest thorn, was just trying to make this group work for 2021. And you sign
yeah,
a contract and then having to work through like, well, this is a different this is a little different than one trip. Like you're having to break a contract. So that was my biggest challenge during that time. But that group did end up traveling in 2021. So at least it finally went through. I mean, it was like 100 people, so it was a big group.
that
Um,
is big.
and that was kind of my I mean, that was my biggest sale to that point. But I didn't have a lot of little trips that needed to be canceled, which was good. Um, but I was starting to pick up in inquiries because everything kind of happened in February, March, and January and February are typically the busy time of year. So, I was ramping up and realizing I didn't have Travel Joy set up. I was just doing everything via email at that point. I think Travel Joy is something that's now covered in the MBA program, like for, like maybe a year membership or something. Like I was just like, I'll pay for it once I need it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I need it. Um, and so like I was just getting to the point where I was setting all that type of stuff up, and then everything, crashed down around us. So I was able to see like, oh, I need to be able to keep my destination stuff organized, and so I took a Trello training course and like through a travel company, or travel like, like an advisor. And then I did Travel Joy setup like with someone, and I started doing these things that like, okay, let me just get ready for when the market comes back.
Yeah.
And I don't, I felt like it would come back eventually, but I didn't know what that would look like. But for it never dawned on me that I wouldn't continue doing this.
Yeah.
I one like epiphany I had at some point was like, well, I'm just going to do virtual events for kids and like do like a lesson for the kids on on Australia or Peru or wherever, and then I'm going to do it for them anyway. So then I'll just record it and put it out there. And I mean, it really didn't get that many views, but it gave me a purpose, and
Yeah.
so and it just helped me keep that passion alive within me. Um, and so I think the let's see the rows. I guess that I mean just knowing that I needed to set up my systems, and I was able
Mhm.
just to have fun with these little extra things to keep the brand alive and with virtual events and things like that. But the truth of the matter is that I really had not gotten so far along that like I didn't feel the need to pivot and like, oh, let me talk to everyone into a domestic trip or something like that. Like I had suddenly had two kindergartners living with me that I needed to teach how to read. So really that was my focus. It this kind of took a back burner, but I did still end up working a good bit, just keeping things the brand alive, in front of people, and then getting systems ready. But the funny thing is that once things started picking back up in 2021, like you were like, oh well, these systems still need some work. So then you're like trying to keep up with the the
Tweaking them.
yeah, every tweaking while you're like actually starting to book trips again. So yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty quiet for me for a while there, and on purpose. Like I really wasn't trying to do anything, any selling or anything, because I just needed to make sure my kids didn't fall behind. But so I think that in a way that was a rose, right? Because like
Right. Right.
I could focus on them and didn't worry about unraveling a bunch of trips or needing to have a certain level of income. I was able just to do what needed to be done to keep the brand alive.
So your kids started kindergarten in fall of 2020, is that right?
2019.
Oh, they started in 2019. Okay.
Mhm.
So now they're in first grade and you're in the thick of the pandemic. And so I will put words in your mouth that that is one of the roses is that the thank you to the pandemic. It gave you some time to be able to actually focus on, I mean, that's a critical time that they needed help and um all the zooming in the world does not replace the in-person classroom for them in first grade for sure. So
Right.
um okay, so now, a milestone that that we talk about in the travel industry often is crossing $1 million in sales in a 12-month window of time. Can you tell us about when you first crossed the $1 million mark and how you felt and what were you excited about and were there any fears or doubts that came up too with that milestone?
So I crossed that milestone in December of 2022. So 2021 was pretty quiet. I just kind of continued, and then um, yeah, 2022 came along, and all of that, keeping the brand alive and getting the systems ready, was like finally paid off.
Yeah.
So, yes, I did cross that, and I thought, I mean, there were no real fears. I was just like, "Well, let's do it again," and then I blew that out the water the next year. So I was shocked. I mean, I don't know what the recipe is really other than do a good job. I mean, and it led to referrals and that sort of thing. Um, but I think because it was such a, like just a slow roll at first, on purpose, because there was a pandemic and I wasn't trying to sell during that time. That it just allowed me to ramp up when I needed to.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It was really fun to watch your, success and journey, just watch you just continue to, and you were very methodical and patient, and it was rewarding because I would say that there is a recipe, there is a formula, and we teach the formula in the Travel MBA program. That's what all the modules are about. But I think the the formula or the recipe for success as a travel advisor is a lot like the tip of an iceberg. It's important. It's what most people are focused on. It's what people want to see. But below the surface, not visible to anybody are two things that are much more important, which I believe are mindset and obviously the foundation, or the your community, and the support you surround yourself with. Um, so now that you are on the other side and you are far from average as we would define it, and you've achieved entrepreneurial success. We define that as, when you have a business that gives you freedom, fulfillment, and financial satisfaction. Would you rate all three of those at a 7 or higher now, where you currently are?
Fulfillment is a 10. Like I just I love it to a fault in that, like, I will work, from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. some days, so that how does that with your freedom? Well, those don't go hand in hand. It feels like there's always something more I can do. Not everything is like, oh, I have to do it. Like today has actually been a day where I've been able to focus on some things I want to do, which is such a great feeling. So
Yeah.
yeah, so freedom, I mean, I guess it would be at a 7 at this point. It's gotten a lot better, but there were some times where it was really low. But building a business is not easy for anyone, I'm sure. But um, you have to put in, really have to put in hours at some point, unless you
Mhm.
have. I'm sure that some people who have like a built-in like community, or that are coming to them like luxury clients that because from a prior career or things like that, I'm sure that it's not as difficult. I'm not saying it's not difficult, because it's all, there's so much to learn in this industry. Every trip's different, every client's different, every like cruises, FIT, all, there are just so many, like, it makes it very hard to train too. um but I do think that you have to know that at some point there's gonna be some really long days. But through hiring a team, I have been able to get some of my freedom back, and I'm still working on that. I mean, the goal would be it's a 5 or so, like to I mean, oh, sorry. The goal would be, so I'm thinking like average, but like yeah, so the goal would be like 10 on everything, right? But I like being involved. So, figuring out which things to give up,
Yeah.
and just to make sure that like I'm always hiring ahead of, so I don't get into that crazy space again. Because, especially with young kids, there are times where I know that I was not being my best self for my family. And so, I think it's important when you're feeling that you don't have to say yes to everything. You don't have to get like if you're not going to get to millions this year, like okay, there's still next year, like not to kill
Yeah.
yourself, because I definitely did at some points. And so but you know financial satisfaction getting there too, like because when you build a team, then you're paying people, and then you're also, there's new tools coming out all the time. And
You're
I think that,
reinvesting in the business all the
yes,
time. You're
exactly.
generating great income, but you're reinvesting it right back
Yes,
into the business so that
yes,
you can continue to get to where you want to get to.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So I would I I'm on, yeah, so that 7 and above, yes, we're just not at 10s.
Well, you've already kind of answered this, but I want to dig a little bit into the fact that you are a mom, and I know that that's really a high priority for you, and making sure that you show up as the mom that you want to be. I think you're an amazing mom. I've been very much on the outside looking in, but I think you do an incredible job. Um, and so if we have people that are listening that are moms and who are a little bit worried about taking the entrepreneurial journey because they don't want to lose that as a sense of priority, what are your thoughts and tips on, balancing your business with your other responsibilities, like being a mom, being a wife, being, someone in your community, any one of those responsibilities?
Well, thank you for the compliment, first of all. I feel like sometimes I don't feel like the best mom but I know at the end of the day, I have happy kids and I take them to do cool things, and I'm there for them. I'm picking them up from school every day. I am taking them to their sports practices if I'm not on a trip. So I think that if you are working a 9 to 5 and you're considering this, you have to think like you have the flexibility to take more vacations, right? Like I work hard when I work, but I'm also gone more. I'm gone more than 4 weeks a year. 4 weeks is with
Yeah.
them. My husband gets 4 weeks. We do 4 weeks together as a family. And then there's opportunities. There's, like the conference, symposium, all these types of things. So there's that.
Yeah.
But also like you have the flexibility to, like I said, the 5 a.m. Like some days I'll set my alarm for 5 a.m. if I know I need to do something uninterrupted. But that means when they wake up at 7, I'm in the kitchen with them. They pack their own lunches, but like, just to kind of be in there and that sort of thing. So I can pick them up from school. I can take them to their practices. So that's the flexibility that's important to me, is that I'm not in Charlotte and then fighting 77 to get home in the evenings, like I am
Yeah.
able to be there for them. Like their school doesn't even have a bus, so I don't even know how we would do it otherwise. Because they're in a charter school. So, I think that there is flexibility, even though I am a lot of weeks working more than 40 hours, but I'm also traveling more and I'm also leaving every day from like 2:30 to 3:30 to pick them up. And so there is flexibility even if you are working more than you used to, but you don't have to work as hard as me, and I'm working on not working as hard.
I truly believe that if you're happy, you are showing up as the best mom that you can be.
That is
And
true, because
if
I am
that career
fulfilled.
is, yeah, yeah, um, because you'd be even less present if you weren't. And, even if you were just, if you were staying at home and not following a career at all, but not fulfilled at that, I still think you're a better version of yourself as a mom being fulfilled.
Yeah.
Um, so the my final question is, so what do you think is a turning point or multiple turning points that you have, and that if you look back now and you think, okay, I think that's one of the reasons why I did reach this destination. And I know you're never done, right? It's a journey that never ends really. But to get to where you are, what do you think were some pivotal things that you did?
Hiring. I mean,
Yeah.
just hiring help. Like, I couldn't do this alone.
Mhm.
I'm completely perplexed by the people who are operating at a level like mine that don't have a team. And so, but I know that that allowed me to I mean, it's there's a direct correlation. Like in what I think it was in 2022 around the summertime is when I hired a client experience. At the time, I don't remember what I called it, but I was like, "Oh, it's just gonna be a few hours a week," and within a year, she was full-time salary. So, like, I that being able to have help and, work like, her brilliance is, like, she's detail-oriented, and she sees it as a traveler would see it, because to me, so many things are obvious because I've been to 50 something countries. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, like, I travel all the time." But even she travels, but she sees things differently. It's not just like, inherent like it is for me. And so, I mean, without a doubt, that right there allowed me to hit, the $1 million mark. But then, um, just now, I had someone else on my team who was sub agent, but then she's just like, I really want to be part of the team. And so converting her to be like, to do a similar client experience type, help me with the research and then get the proposals out. And then, when I close it, kind of take it over. So, and now I've just hired, and that's a part time position. And then I've just hired someone to help with cruises. And so, like, there's no way that I could handle this volume of business without their help. I mean, it's still a work in progress. There's still, I'm answering calls and texts, and like, you have to be prepared to help people, like, they can't, it takes a while for all of this information to be, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know the word I'm looking for, but like, osmosis is
Yeah.
there is a lot, but for me, I know that that's just hiring is the only reason I've been able
I
to reach
agree.
this
I think
level.
it's unbelievably important, and it's a, there's the conversation is when you start the business, it's all about building the sales funnel, right? An effective sales funnel, which you're still focused on, and you'll never stop focusing on that. But there does get to a point where you get a lot of it going, and now you've got all the clients coming to you, and that's when you have to move into, oh, now I got to grow and scale.
Yeah,
And I think hiring is a huge piece of it. And it's such a massive objection we see with travel advisors who have this solopreneur mentality. I don't want to hire someone because I don't want the cash flow liability. I would add that from my perspective, a pivotal thing that, this is more of a consistent thing for you, is that you're very coachable and you lean in to your community. You listen. I think I have a memory of you at the very first mastermind meeting that you attended, and you
mhm,
were full of questions, and you were just like, you would just soak it all in, and it was really exciting to see um your enthusiasm for being in a room full of other people, who most of the people in the room were further down the road than you wanted to be. And then a year
absolutely.
later, seeing you in the same meeting, and you're like, I'm actually like solidly in here. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, I didn't just make the cut. Like, I'm one of the starters now.
yeah, so it was like a year and a half ago, I'm like, I mean, I really shouldn't be here. Like, I barely made it, and then, yeah, now I'm like, "No, no, I should be here, I got this,"
and
like,
and you're and you're an inspiration for others of hiring who still haven't made that, move. They're still kind of sitting on the fence with that. And that's what's cool to see is, and I think a huge reason why is because you are very coachable, and you truly do take advantage of all the wisdom that you're getting. You don't necessarily follow every single thing, but you you listen and I think you're very good at realizing that will work for me. That
like,
probably won't, but that will work for me. And I'm going to do that. And, it takes courage to, be open, be coachable, but then also follow through on what inspires you. It takes a lot of courage to do that. So I think those are some, maybe you're not even aware of it, but those are some really cool sides to Jen Campbell Bowles that help in your success.
well, now that you say it, I mean, it makes complete sense because like I've always been a good student. Like I've always cared. I love learning, and so
Yeah,
I wasn't really a great like. Um, I mean, I was fine, but like when I did finance or had my job. But to me, it was. I mean,
yeah,
I would tell people this. I'm like, I work to live. Like I
yeah,
work to be able to afford to travel and do the thing, live the lifestyle I want. But there was nothing. I wasn't learning. I wasn't like listening to podcasts about financial analysis, right? So, but now, like, I don't go on a walk with my dog without my AirPods in, listening to one of our calls through GTN, another podcast in the industry. Like I am always absorbing and learning and, trying to figure things out. And I mean, I might have one idea and 6 months later I've completely done a 180, but like it's just constantly wanting to learn and grow. And so, and like, I think GTN says this a lot, like you don't have to do that, right? If
right.
you're fine with $1 million, and I'm sure one day it'll be like, yeah, I just want $1 million and I can
Yeah,
handle that on my own probably. And, but like that's like a retirement plan or something, like I like the idea of growing, but it's not for everybody.
mhm,
But if it sounds good to you, it's possible.
yeah. So I want to ask, my last question is, tell me about your secret sauce when someone books a trip with Explore More Family Travel. What do you think that you bring to the travel planning process that kind of is your, secret sauce that really does make it more enjoyable to your client?
Well, I think the way I interact with people, it's kind of I mean, it depends on the client, but I feel like a lot of people come to me, it feels like they could be my friend, right? Like we're just talking to each other in a way, and I'm just genuinely excited for their trip. And I'm also very transparent. I mean, maybe almost to a fault sometimes because but I guess when I'm trying to get them to do something that might cost a little more or something, I'm just like, "Yeah, this will cost more, but this is why you should do it." Like, I'm very just upfront with people, and I feel like once I have a call, as long as, their their budget is within what I can work with, like, I feel like most of them close. Like, I don't have the close rate. I know I should and all of those things, but I don't feel like, I get to that stage and don't close. It's just like a way of interacting with people where it's like I'm talking to you and not to like a client that I'm trying to sell, you know?
You're coming
Um,
from a place of giving as opposed to selling.
yeah,
You're trying to give
give
them
them the
something
best
that they really
experience.
want. And I think you have this wisdom that you may not even give yourself full credit for, but you have this like internal wisdom when it comes to travel about, you know, yeah, that does sound expensive, but that's totally worth it. And that is super expensive and that's not worth it. So I would never push that on my client. I'm only gonna, maybe push them outside their financial comfort, spending comfort zone when I know it's absolutely worth it and it's gonna make a difference. And they're gonna come back and they're gonna be so glad that they did do that. I think that it's just there, it's all in your head and you ooze it all over them when you talk to them, and so that's why you close them.
And just practice, right? Like I might not be traveling exactly as my client travels or to the exact same destination, but I've been I would say most of the places that I typically sell, I've been to at least once. And
Yeah.
just being able to, I think, and I try to explain this, like, just because I haven't been there doesn't mean that, I mean, like, I have partners, like, and if people ask me that, or, not everybody cares to know, but I think when I have been to a place, um, it you can hear the excitement in my voice,
Yeah.
like, I'm, like, truly, like, just so excited to just and I try not to talk too much during the calls and let them do the talking, but, like, when I am able to talk about, like, my experience there, or, like, something that I think that they would enjoy, and just logistics too, like, I think, like, seeing how the map and how that particular thing doesn't work, but I think maybe if we think about this instead, I think all of those things just make the calls I don't really stress out about.
Yeah.
That's kind of that part's pretty easy, and I don't like talking on the phone, so that says a lot.
I will add that I think something else, because I observe you doing this when you travel with your own children, is that you are a fantastic advisor for the parents that want to go and explore the world with their kids, and they don't want to cater the vacation to the kids. They want to create a vacation that is
Everybody
amazing for
wins.
them, and then the kids will enjoy it, and you know how to layer in things that the kids will enjoy. But I think, taking that river cruise that summer, last summer that you did
Mhm.
that, with the kids, and getting other families to, like, the river cruise is not the kind of mode of transportation you would think most people with kids would consider. And you were like, no, this is awesome. It's so overlooked for my families, because you don't need all the bells and whistles that the big mega cruise ships have to keep your kids stimulated. You figure out how to use travel to stimulate the kids very
Yeah.
naturally, in a much more natural
Well, I
way.
have clients that they want all the bells and whistles, and that's fine. I'll meet them where they're at. But I try to encourage
Yeah,
people who feel like that's the only option. Like, no,
yeah,
like there's this cruise line and they're more destination focused,
right.
that sort of thing. And so like for my kids, I'm like, they need a good destination and a pool to jump into. It doesn't have to be like go-karts going across,
Right.
like so not to knock it. I love my partners at some of these bigger shops, but like for us, that's not it doesn't have it's not just about them, and we want all to have a
Yeah,
good vacation.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I love that about you. All right. Well, it's been awesome. It's been fantastic.
yeah,
Congratulations for your success. In
thank you.
our book, you are far from average. And I just think you are very inspiring. Um, and I hope somebody will listen to this conversation and be inspired by your journey, and maybe take a leap of faith that they weren't willing to take.
Yes, because it can create a wonderful life.
A wonderful life. Exactly. Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much.